Marcia, you said some of the responses that we've seen from policymakers sort of reflect the drinking of the Kool-Aid, but can I just want to understand this myself. You've made a strong pitch for the legal system, the criminal justice system, to kick in cases of family violence. But perhaps one of the reasons motivating the policymakers is concern about high rates of Indigenous incarceration.
Yes.
So how do those two things line up, and how do we solve that problem?
Well, that's right. Catherine, you've got that exactly right. That there's a tension between a perceived need to lower incarceration rates and, the critical need to lower violence rates. I've observed the Change the Record campaign, and when it started, it was obvious to me that no consideration was given in the public presentations of the Change the Record campaign to the victims of violence. I think what had happened was that, the publicity given to the Ms Dhu case in Western Australia, and rightly so, was mainly emphasising the fact of the imprisonment for non-payment of fines aspect of the case. But what is glaringly obvious to me in her case, and to women who know about her case, was that she was a victim of domestic violence. She died from injuries received prior to going to prison. She had broken ribs. She was also treated abominably in custody and not taken to hospital. She died in agony from injuries received prior to going to prison. And her family have indicated that it was domestic violence, well, violence from her partner. So the Change the Record campaign speaks only about imprisonment for non-payment of fines, but never mentions the domestic violence in these cases. There's no mention of all the women who've died violently. Now, if you look at the figures in the Northern Territory, the two highest categories of offences for Indigenous men in prison is one, acts intended to cause injury, so that covers grievous bodily harm and other assault, and second, sexual assault. And all of the other offences are in much lower categories. And the Western Australian figures are pretty much the same. You'll find the same patterns in various regions of Australia. So, I'm afraid that some activists have perpetuated the myth that Aboriginal men are going to jail for non-payment of fines. That's simply not the case. We're looking at, I think, probably a rate of, we were told in the Northern Territory by the police that the rate of imprisoned offender to the victims of an offender is 1 to 3, so every offender has 3 victims. I think in reality, if you took in all of my figures, and sorry to be the boring statistician reporter, but if you think about those figures, in fact, it's 1 offender and at least 10 victims. Because most of them, well, many of them, around 20%, 25% are recidivists. They offend repeatedly. And no one counts the children as victims. So it's a good question. Where are the fathers? Well, we know that 10,000 of them or thereabouts are in prison, and we know that 35,000 children are in out-of-home care and under substantiated protection orders. So everyone ignores that figure, and then we're not even counting the women who are the victims of violence and other victims in the community. So I think the ratio of perpetrator to victim is much higher than 1 to 3.
We should push it out.